Good evening, fellow Singaporeans and residents of Choa Chu Kang, GRC, and Bukit Gombak, SMC. A big thank you to all of you for coming today and have spent the last 2.5 hours standing there listening to us. And I can see the number of residents is still increasing. People are still coming in. I must also thank the two ladies who have put up the two placards for Dr. Tan and myself. It reads, Dr. Tan, I love you. And PSP, Leong Mun Wai forever. Thank you. Thank you. I've spoken about the declining standards of PAP at the last rally. Today, I will speak about what PSP has to offer to solve the problems faced by Singaporeans. There is a very big disconnect between the Singapore of the PAP and the Singapore of the people. Do you want a Singapore to be a paradise for a small group of elites and foreign billionaires who pay low taxes, get to enjoy good class bungalows, play golf at country clubs, and drive around on congestion-free roads in the Bentleys and Lamborghinis, while the elderly and destitute in Singapore sell tissue paper at hawker centers? Do you want that? No! Do you want a Singapore where Singaporeans have to pay higher and higher GST and other indirect taxes, including the land cost for public housing? Do you want that? No! Do you want a Singapore when young Singaporeans have to delay their plans to form a family because they have to wait for a long time for a BTO, which is smaller and smaller in size, but higher and higher in price? Do you want that? No! Do you want a Singapore where all Singaporeans have to worry about the lease decay, that the HDB flat they own goes to zero after 99 years? Do you want that? No! And do you want all Singaporeans having to downgrade to a smaller flat in order to retire? Do you want that? No! Do you want a Singapore where you have to endure more and more crowded MRT trains and rising public transport fees? Do you want that? No! Do you want a Singapore where Singaporeans experience more and more difficulty in finding good jobs despite heavy investment in education at our world-class universities? Do you want that? No! And finally, do you want a Singapore where more and more Singaporeans are facing mental health issues because it is so stressful to keep up with the very fast pace of life, high cost of living, and long working hours in Singapore? Do you want that? No! So when you go to the poll on 3rd May, think about what kind of Singapore do you want? PSP recognizes this big disconnect. Hazel and I have recommended many policies to tackle the problems of heartland Singaporeans head on. Of course, tomorrow the mainstream press will say PSP is just advocating spending money, spending money, spending money. But that's not the case. Besides the $6 billion that all my colleagues have, $6 billion surplus that the government had made, which all my colleagues have spoken just now, actually, the government has far more excess financial resources, a fact that I've debated in a full motion for public finance in Parliament in February 2024. Thank you. Thank you. Today, I want to address some issues that are even deeper than what we have talked about generally on policies. And that is about the fact that the PAP government is able to have a firm grip on the finances and hence the life and livelihoods of Singaporeans is because they have full control over the land and they have full control over our CPF accounts. Do we want to continue to allow them to do that? No. Currently, more than 80% of land in Singapore is owned by the government. A lot of this land was acquired from our parents and grandparents in the early 1970s and 80s, very cheaply. Sometimes it's even for $1 or $2. Like the land that the government has acquired from the villages of the Ama King and also Tengah. The government's current policy is that when HDB builds a new flat, it must put the cost of the land into the reserves. We have no problem, and I'm sure many of our parents and grandparents wouldn't mind, or at least in the end they accepted that the government has acquired the land for the good of the country. However, now the government is selling back the land to us at very high cost. One family came to see me. Their grandfather has lost the land, hundreds of acres of land, and was paid only $60,000. They came to me and say that was 30 years ago. Today, that piece of land was just sold 2 years ago for close to $1 billion. And at the same time, their nieces and nephews have to buy HDB flats at $500,000 each. Is that kind of Singapore we want? PSP wants to change that. PSP has proposed that every Singaporean should be entitled to a roof over their head without having the other Singaporeans to pay a hefty land cost for them. Why other Singaporeans? Because today, a Singaporean who buys a BTO flat, he can't afford the price if we include the whole land cost. So what the government has done is to ask all the Singaporeans to pay for it by charging the budget. That means taking the money from the taxes that all of us have paid for. Currently, the state does not charge land cost for schools and hospitals. So why can't we extend this policy to public housing? We want that, right? Under our proposal, if the HDB flat buyer just buy the HDB flat, the BTO flat, for living in, he doesn't need to pay the land cost. However, when he wants to resell the HDB flats for a profit, he needs to pay the land cost to the state. This is fair, right? Is that fair? Yes. Hence, the scheme that we have proposed, no land cost for public housing, is not about giving away land free. It's about providing really affordable public housing to Singaporeans who only want a roof over their heads. Without land costs, just to give you an idea, a BTO today will cost only about $100,000 to $150,000, compared to the current BTO price of about $500,000. The PAP says our proposal is irresponsible. However, is the PAP responsible in promising Singaporeans asset enhancement for their HDB flats and now saying that it will become zero value when the 99-year lease is up? Is that fair? Have they been telling the truth? Even before the flat reaches 99 years, actually more and more Singaporeans will start to suffer from lease decay as their flat age beyond 40 years old. This means that there will be an increasing divergence between the price of younger flats and older flats. This will become more and more noticeable when flats become older and older. The raw deal that the residents of blocks 562 to 565 along Ang Mo Kio Avenue 3 for their SERS in 2022. I don't know whether you remember that or not. At that time, the Ang Mo Kio residents were complaining, and that came out in the mass media. I went out to try to render some help to them. And the reason why they didn't have a good deal compared to other SERS in the past is because of the effect of lease decay. But 7 years ago, PAP promised that they would have some schemes to deal with the lease decay problem, like they have proposed VERS, Voluntary and Block Redevelopment Scheme. However, 7 days later, Singaporeans are still waiting, and I have questioned the ministers many times in Parliament. I say, lease decay is already causing problem to Singaporeans today. For those people who are owning older flats, why don't you come out with a solution as soon as possible? Those Singaporeans who are suffering actually do not know they are suffering. This is the kind of government who do not give us complete information. So I have asked them many times in Parliament. They say that it's coming, but till date, there has been no answer to them. So many years ago, when they say that they will find a solution for lease decay, was that just an empty promise? A lot of flats built in the 1970s will reach the 60-year mark very soon. Lease decay will start to have a bigger and bigger impact on our property prices. We need more certainty from the government for the sake of Singaporeans, not just empty talk. With our no land cost scheme, future Singaporeans will not have to worry about lease decay anymore because the price is low. The BTO price is low. And future generations of Singaporeans will not need to worry about ever increasing BTO prices. PSP's no land cost scheme is not radical. It is practical. It's compassionate. In fact, it is urgent. Do you agree? It makes public housing truly public again, not just in name, but in spirit. This is the kind of national policies we want to debate and find solutions for Singaporeans. We are very disappointed that the National Development Minister, Mr. Desmond Lee, who is directly in charge of public housing, did not seem to appreciate the advantages of our no land cost scheme. No wonder he has declined our invitation to a debate on national issues. He only seems to want to talk about local issues. But the national issues, which are far more important for Singaporeans to improve their lives and livelihoods, he doesn't want to debate with us. Every election, the PAP wants you to think that you are electing estate managers for the town councils. But actually, as MPs, we should be debating national policies. You are electing MPs because you want your MP to voice your problems and formulate good national policies. Agree? But this does not mean PSP neglect local issues. In fact, we have spoken about local issues. We have spoken about, for example, one of the most important things was the relatively poor public transport system in the West compared to the East. In October 2024, after the 6-day East-West line breakdown, I asked the government whether they were plan to connect the Jurong region line to the Circle line so that there are more alternatives for residents in the West to travel to the city. The government did not say yes at the time. But during the budget in February this year, they say they will do so. So there's a difference if there are people, there are MPs who speak up for you in Parliament. So send us to Parliament so that we can demand accountability. We can voice your problems in the Parliament. Thank you, thank you. My fellow Singaporeans, the 4G PAP has lost its way. As I've said during my first rally, the 4G government is no longer the grade A government we have known in the past for the previous generations of PAP government. We need to have a strong opposition in Parliament to hold the 4G PAP government to account and to ask questions when things go wrong. Increasingly, Parliament has become the only forum where Singaporeans can demand answers from the PAP government. Do you want the Parliament to be dominated only by PAP MPs? who are unlikely to ask the sensitive questions when things go wrong, right? We must elect more constructive opposition MPs to Parliament. No more PAP free riders who don't dare to speak up for the people. If you agree to all this, vote for Progress for All. Vote for PSP. Can you repeat after me? Vote for PSP. Vote for PSP. Vote for PSP. Thank you very much.